Welcome to the Bytes of Azure Podcast.
Fast, fresh, digestible cloud insights.
The latest updates, trends and technology.
Real talk with real Azure experts.
Let's unlock the cloud together.
Well, guys, welcome back to the Bytes Azure Podcast. Today we've got a really exciting topic, but I guess before we get in, let's explain who you're listening to. So my name is Chris Gaff. I work in our Azure team here and joined by Andrew. Chris, don't know if you want to introduce yourselves quickly.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Andrew, part of the technical pre-sales team, focuses around Azure and infrastructure.
I'm Chris Knapp. I'm an Azure specialist, and so looking at all things around Azure and how Bytes can help our customers be successful.
Good stuff. And guys, thanks for joining us. And when we set this brief, it was fairly loose and wanted to keep it that way, keep it conversational. We're here to talk about Fabric. There's a big buzz in the market. You've probably seen a lot of marketing yourselves from Microsoft, especially around Fabric as a product. And I guess here to maybe demystify a little bit, kind of explain why actually it can be a really good part of a journey for our customers. And then also, obviously, it being the Bytes Azure podcast, how Bytes can help if you are listening to this and you've not started that journey. But Andrew, maybe let's start with you, sir. I guess talking about Fabric, why do you think it's important for Microsoft that the Fabric message lands and that their customers are kind of looking at that as a tool set?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we look back at the history of what Fabric is, it was launched, generally available, should I say, in November 2023. So we're coming up to its 3-year anniversary now. So you think of it as a product, it sounds quite new and it sounds like everything it's doing is quite new. But when you look under the hood, a lot of the products that exist within Fabric have been around for a while. So things like Data Warehouse, Data Lake, and Azure Synapse, Power BI, those things have been around for much longer than Fabric. What happened with Fabric was it bundled all of that into a suite, and it made it much more accessible and to take it as an entirety as a product. So the question you ask around why Microsoft really focusing around it is that Microsoft have that messaging around data and around AI, and AI is an unavoidable topic at the moment. So Microsoft see Fabric as that one-stop shop to help you along that AI journey, and it all starts with the data. It starts with, is your data consistent? Is it standardized? Does it make sense? How can you make sure that happens? And that starts with that conversation in Fabric.
I think to build on that a little bit, looking forwards, by 2030, it's estimated that around 50% of failures around anything around AI will be because of poor governance. So I think why it's not a silver bullet in terms of install it and we're fine, if we can install technology like Fabric and get the most out of the suite, configure it correctly, then I think it's a good indication that organisations won't be part of that 50% that are making failures because of governance.
Yeah, and I think you've both mentioned it, and Andrew, every time I record anything with you, we kind of, regardless of what the topic, it all comes back to AI and how does it help me drive AI or protect against AI, kind of govern AI, etc. And I remember Bytes did an event a number of years ago at I think it was the Science Museum, and someone stood up and kind of said, in order to even begin looking at any kind of AI journey, any kind of automation, anything of that nature, you needed to get your data in order. And that conversation hasn't really changed, and that, by the sounds of it, is maybe where Fabric helps, and it's a suite of products. In its kind of initial stages, at least, there wasn't anything necessarily new there or groundbreaking there. Obviously, more developments have come. But one of the things I saw when we were kind of researching for this was Microsoft, or someone suggesting that for Microsoft, Fabric will do to the data conversation what M365 did to kind of the EUC productivity side of things. It's a much more efficient way of procuring, of running, of licensing those products. And I guess the other thing, Andrew, and we talk about this with customers all the time, is it's moving from maybe having to think about things as an infrastructure or a platform conversation into that SaaS suite, and maybe moving the management side of things out of the way so that customers can then get kind of more out of their data without worrying too much about the infrastructure as well.
And here's my hot take, right? Let's have hot take number one of the day. For me personally, and I appreciate the opinion might be different across the internet and across the world, AI is just a new way of talking about those things, about the operational side of IT as much as possible. It is obviously relevant, and the advancements are amazing, and you can see it day to day, whether you do it on social media, in the workplace, in your personal life, whatever it might be. But AI is just another way of enforcing that messaging. And yeah, you're right, in terms of what we've talked about as IT professionals for decades now is about how do you become more operationally efficient? How do you become more governed? How do you become more secure? And yeah, Fabric plays a big part of that. Fabric is, again, Microsoft's way of standardizing, a way of looking at consolidation and looking at how do we alleviate some of that operational stress from customers. So yeah, definitely looking at it. And then part of that as well is the use of OneLake. And OneLake is probably the one thing that is that unique part of Fabric from day one. How do you make sure that you consolidate all of these disparate data sources into one? And OneLake's that answer to that. So yeah, when you talk to customers, and when we talk to customers especially, the big problem we have is, I've got data, I've got tons of data, it's just everywhere, and I don't know how to bring it all together. Well, OneLake and Fabric can help with that.
I'm conscious I was a bit of a prophet of doom on the last one in terms of the statistic about what things can go wrong. Microsoft have commissioned a Forrester study on it around like Fabric in particular, and really looking at if like those customers that implement Fabric and implement it well, so governing the data, getting the security right, getting those guardrails in place for AI, are likely to see a 380% return on investment. And that, it's a big number, but obviously looking at that research. So it's really looking at those customers who want to look at AI and really drive that innovation that's going to revolutionize their business. You need to, like, even if it's big amounts now in terms of investment about getting Fabric right, you really will see that return on investment down the line. So those organizations that look to do that, look to go frontier now, ensuring that we have those guardrails and the governance and security is correct is going to be critical.
But I think, and we'll come on to, I guess, how we can help organizations, and you both speak to, a large variety every week, I'm sure, of, anything from kind of upper enterprise organizations to kind of some of the smaller, maybe SMB or mid-market customers we work with. But before we talk around how Bytes can help, I think you've both hit the nail on the head there in that actually moving away from why Fabric is important for Microsoft in their kind of journey and their transformation as an organization, and we actually look at it more from a customer-centric side of things. I think what's important for us to understand is that when we're speaking to our contacts at any of our customers, most of the time the pressure is external when it comes to an AI. You may have the board, or you may have shareholders or customers, etc., saying, "Oh, we need to do AI. We need to do we need to do this to keep up with our competition, etc." And the amount of times I've had a conversation with an organization where to start with that conversation is, okay, so one of the things we need to do this year is we need to do AI. It's like, okay, well, where do you start? And for me, before you even start talking to a customer around rolling out Copilot and looking at individual use cases and all that good stuff, actually getting your data in order is probably a good place to start. And Andrew, I know certainly when Microsoft made the change with Power BI P1 licenses and how they were now going to be procured as Fabric, one of the first conversations was not just, okay, well, this is how you now buy it, but you were involved with some organizations of what else can we do? How do we start? Where's your data today? And I don't know if there's any kind of common themes or challenges you see that may be worth the listeners kind of taking heed of.
Yeah, I think definitely when you look at it from a like-for-like style approach, and you look at the choice of buying Power BI Premium and the choice of buying Fabric, you wonder, why am I buying Fabric? What's the reason? Why have Microsoft done this to me? Some people might be asking that as well. And it's true, like most software, and I think there's a stat out there about how most software is massively underutilized. If you use Fabric as a Power BI replacement, you are not getting the true value from it. You're not looking to really take your data platforming to the next level. And so a lot of conversations we have with customers is around, actually, did you know Fabric can do so much more? So when I said at the start, when it first was launched, there wasn't that much in terms of new products. What Microsoft have done now, they've introduced so many more new products. I think it's about a dozen named new products, and then many, many more add-ons that have become part of it. And so when you look at that, and you look at it from a suite of products and a suite of services, and also that operational side, you're looking at it as that place to go to for all your data needs. You mentioned about how that directive and that initiative from senior management, from outside resources for customers is around, we need to use AI. And often, the first question we ask is like, but why? What for? And ultimately, that's the conversation that we have with customers about trying to understand what the benefit of AI is, what the ROI is, because I think there's a lot of customers who are still not seeing that ROI. They're doing AI in some way, but they're not seeing the ROI. But fundamentally, I think beneath all of that is structuring and ordering the data, building out your medallion architecture so you're getting the best of the data as quickly as possible. And then from there, driving actual business benefit, driving actual use cases to make then AI a worthy tool, as opposed to the next fad or the next, I don't know, trying to think of a tool. The next, I had a mini disc back in the day, the next mini disc. Let's use that as an example.
And I think globally we've had around 400 billion spent by in the industry purely around data that's then going to have things like generative AI sitting on top of that. And I think it's quite damning at the moment. Around 95% of organisations that are looking to use generative AI see no return on investment. And I think all of those principles that you've talked through there around like not getting your data correct, not having that security in place, and all of those components of the Fabric suite, if we're not looking at those individually, that is why organisations at the moment aren't getting it quite right. We're looking at the cherry on top of the cake at the moment, where generative AI is not achieving what they're looking for on that. So if we can work on the basics and get Fabric configured correctly, then I think we're in a far better situation as an industry to really make sure that 95% is reduced and reduced very quickly.
I think that's a good place to maybe change track in terms of how we can help, how Bytes can help. Our listeners will probably either be buying from Bytes or at least talking to Bytes about how we can help from a services side of things. And it doesn't have to be an organization that needs to do everything with AI as the first and foremost. It could be, I remember talking to businesses who wanted data at their fingertips as quickly as possible to understand when a bid for a new piece of work came in. Have we done this piece of work before? Do we win this piece of work? Why do we lose? What additional questions can we ask? Anything of that nature can kind of help when you've got a better understanding of your data. But I think if we look at both ends of the spectrum, you've got organizations who, may have multiple file shares or NAS or whatever it might be in disparate locations, all the way through to then those organizations who are really at the cusp of doing something quite clever and quite unique with AI. And we see, from start to finish everywhere in between. And I guess, Andrew, it's not a one size fits all, is it, when it comes to working with Bytes and how we can help? And I don't know if maybe you wanted to talk around the work your team does in pre-sales of, let's say an organization's reached out or their salesperson's reached out to you and said, Andrew, I've just spoken to my customer. They want to talk about Fabric. Can you help? What do those initial conversations and workshops look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the time we're talking to organizations that have some data platform of some type. It's quite rare nowadays to have an organization that says, we don't have any data platform, so we can start using it. There are some, and absolutely we can help them get started and enable them, but most organizations have a data platform. But because they have that data platform, they have some element of understanding of what their problems are today. So identifying the problems is first and foremost the first thing. It's less about selling a product and more about understanding the problem and relaying why Fabric or any other solution, in all honesty, can be a better alternative. But selling the product is only stage one. It's only part of the process. Really, to get the most out of it is why does it work for you as a customer? And we're seeing in a lot of cases that actually, luckily, Fabric fulfills a lot of the use cases that we're talking to our customers about. So first and foremost, identify the use case. Secondly, identify the technology that is appropriate to solve the problem. And as I say, luckily, Fabric is now meeting a lot of those problem statements. So where we're helping customers is really kind of answering the question, sometimes helping form the question, and then enabling them to show what they can do with the technology. Once you have that, you have the power to then go back to the business and say, actually, this is a worthwhile project. We are starting to see the ROI that we mentioned about before. Because, yeah, the last thing we want to do is take people down a journey, then spend a load of money, and then in and go, well, that was a nice experience, but we didn't really achieve anything.
And I've been really surprised on the percentage of my customers that aren't aware of like Microsoft's investment in Fabric as a platform. And so things like Azure Accelerate, where they really see moving, even if they're on Power BI and they're looking to move to that on Fabric and get a bit more value from the software, they see it as a huge leap in terms of understanding and readiness of their organisation to make sure it fits right well for them. With Azure Accelerate, we have that ability to build a proof of value with them. And so like with the Bytes expertise in that sort of area, like you said, where it's like understanding all those capabilities, and before they make the decision to commit to Fabric, they can really build that proof of value assessment with Bytes to understand what the cost is, what the benefit is for their organisation, if there are any blockers, and build that plan. And then after that, if they're comfortable with that and it's a platform they want to move towards and a stage, there is the migration as well that we can help with. And Azure Accelerate will help that from start to finish, to make sure that it's something that we can help with in that sort of area. And of course, if they move and it becomes business as usual, we're in a good position where we can support them with that. And so if there are any issues, we can get back on their feet as soon as possible.
I think you raise a good point when you talk about Microsoft's investment. You know, Microsoft have got a really good track record, and we as a partner have got a really good track record of working with the vendor of applying funding, applying professional service kind of credits and help from Microsoft to help organizations get the most out of that technology. We do it day in, day out with Azure. For the last kind of 6 months or so, we've been doing it with Fabric and other kind of products within that data and AI suite. Obviously, you wouldn't go a whole podcast without hearing the word Copilot, for example. But I think, Chris, to your last point there is, you don't just have to approach a partner for help when you're at the start of that journey. Actually, the way that Azure Accelerate is built is very much a case of, as you grow or accelerate on that journey, actually there is kind of milestones to hit which will allow you to unlock more funding that then allows our professional services colleagues and our people in our deployment teams actually get under the hood with our customers and look at that. And we've got some really skilled individuals both in our pre-sales team, Andrew, no blushes please, but also in our delivery team as well, who are talking to organizations day in, day out, who may be in a similar sector to people listening to this now, or may have gone through similar struggles and similar kind of adoption hurdles, shall we say. And I think part of the reassurance for our organizations around working with a partner like Bytes is we've probably seen something similar before, and we can not only help you get there, but help you kind of maybe not turn down the wrong path. And kind of conscious of time, so maybe Andrew, I know we didn't prep for this, so apologies in advance, sir, but if you were to let's move the conversation on. So organization listens to this podcast, has actually been buying Fabric and using some of those tools either disparately or together, and they need some kind of ad hoc help, some ad hoc advice. Is that something that Bytes would offer, or do we need to, I guess, start from the start and unpick everything, or do we have that kind of continuous assistance as and when things come up and help you kind of get the most of that technology?
100%. We have customers who are everywhere along that journey, anywhere from the start to the point of actually I'm using it and it's doing what I need to do, but I need to do more. So we would definitely want to welcome a conversation with anyone who's along that journey, because in some way or another, even if it's just a sounding board, or even if it's just some checks and balances, have a conversation with us, talk to us. There are plenty of services. We have a very skilled team in-house that could help with that conversation. And I think ultimately, if it costs nothing but a conversation, then you might be able to find out something new and something different.
Yeah, and I think that might be a good place to end. Obviously, I always link you both in with some kind of call to action, and maybe that's the perfect call to action: is reach out, have a conversation, either through your Bytes account manager or through tell me more at bytes.co.uk, and one of us would be more than happy to talk to you. And I think as an aside, obviously, as you listen to these podcasts and as you listen to these episodes, if there are other topics that you want Bytes to cover, if you want us to bring other individuals in from the industry, from Microsoft or from some of our ecosystem partners, do let us know. Do either, again, reach out to our marketing team or put something in the comments, and we'd love to touch on that at a later episode. But I guess, gents, as always, thank you for joining me, and hopefully those listening have found this insightful and either a food for thought and something to think about, or maybe we're not alone in some of the challenges we're having with our AI and our data journey, and knowing that Bytes backed by Microsoft can help them achieve that. So thanks very much.